I'm gonna narrate something that I wrote today. I'm leaning towards turning it into a larger work at some point. Maybe something like a novella. I'm not quite sure. I imagine I'll encounter the same problems I did with the last novel I attempted to write, which is just simply that it's very easy to write yourself into a corner and then sort of leave it at that, because you would have to basically go outside of your actual knowledge to finish, because it's just that's the sort of corner you've written yourself into, and I'd rather not write anything than, well, mislead. So that's sort of where I leave things a lot of the time, but I may just, for the sake of actually getting a work done, start just going with the idea as what it is, an idea, a hypothesis, a reality map, something to consider, something symbolic, something, metaphorical. But I think that's probably enough introduction for what I have titled as of now, The Apocalypse of Jonny the Savage. I write this in the hope that it is not already too late to save ourselves, and to recognize that the idea of an external savior was a means of orchestrating our end. It was always the case that the only person we could ever hope to save in this life is ourselves. Anything else would run counter to the rules of the game we call life. We all thought we were justified. We all thought we were righteous. But none of us were right. We were simply being manipulated. Strangely enough, it has always been popular among humans to see the flaws in others but ignore them in themselves. If only we had recognized our behavior for the hypocrisy it is sooner, it may have been that we would have reached the stars as something more than slaves. Evil is overt, and good is subtle. In an age where what is most easily demonstrable is what is considered true, we tread willingly into a holocaust for the ignorant alone, believing ourselves to be the best and brightest that ever were. Our self-worship has always been used to manipulate us into doing what no one who has experienced ego death, even momentarily, would be capable of. It is only in the belief that this is all there is, and that self-interest is the only interest worth pursuing, that man is capable of committing the worst atrocities this planet has ever witnessed. The Third World War. Let me see, just to make sure. There we go. The Third World War left the world racked by nuclear detonations. It became too dangerous to stay in one place, anywhere, for too long. The Orion Empire finally had the opportunity that they had been waiting for and quietly orchestrating for millennia. Wondrous technology became the norm, and everyone believed that the horrors were over. How wrong they were, because they were only truly beginning. Nothing that had ever happened in the distorted human memory we call history could have prepared us for what was to follow. The rapture came and went, but it wasn't Christ that returned, it was the Orion Empire. Mankind was actually hunted by beings of another kind of awareness that looked at us as we might a stake. We, unknowingly, envied those that were taken into the sky because they had left this hellscape we call home. But we didn't realize what awaited them in the great beyond was much more horrifying than the death and destruction that now defines our planet. It wasn't just evil that presented itself, like in the early 1950s with the US government. It was also good that came out of hiding or into our awareness. We were warned that the bearers of false gifts and broken promises were not to be trusted, and that we were nowhere near spiritually evolved enough to handle this technology. But no one would even consider ulterior motives in presenting us with this technology in mankind's most desperate hour. They were enraptured by digital worlds and the phenomenal instruments of our ultimate destruction and enslavement. The Native Americans had a prophecy that after the white man came to dominate, that he would be followed by a green man. It's too bad that nobody listened, because that's exactly what happened. They used emotionless emissaries in the guise of angels to convince us that the meek had inherited the earth, that we had only truly inherited a horror so abhorrent that no one dare express it. To acknowledge it is to make it real, and a predator that raises us like we raise chickens was something that the perceived owners of the planet couldn't even bear to think about. It would mean that our egos were undeserved, and that our accomplishments were truly nil, because they only represented what a predatory civilization had influenced or allowed us to accomplish. In these cataclysmic times, we turn to the religions that these predators had furnished within our societies. It shouldn't have been a surprise what followed, but because very few of us were consciously aware of our predators, it was. We had welcomed them as our saviors, and they finally had their end to invade. Universal law prohibited the open invasion of a developing planet, like Earth was, even into the 21st century, unless it was within the will of that planet. Now they're here, and not only do they have no intention of leaving, but we have no way of compelling them to leave. Man, after delusions of grandeur, lasting thousands of years, had finally come to understand his actual place in the universe, lower than the untouchables of India. People who spent their lives preaching about hierarchy because of their position within it began to recognize the flaws in the concept. There are a lot of ways to classify different human beings based upon their qualities, but there's no scheme that can chart all of humanity and speak important truths about them individually. People came to recognize that the things they spent their lives obsessing over really didn't matter nearly as much as they once believed. The supposed degeneracy or fascism of social and political spheres is difficult to pearl clutch about when one is enslaved to a comparatively omnipotent race. More than ever, people needed the strength that can only come from religion or one's own personal relationship with the divine, but because man's mystical capacity had been eroded so thoroughly throughout the 20th century, it was a rarity to come across Vedantic wisdom like, each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work, or worship, or psychic control, or philosophy, by one, or more, or all of these, and be free. This is the whole of religion. Doctrines, or dogmas, or rituals, or books, or temples, or forms are but secondary details. It may be too late to save our planet, but it's not too late for us to save our souls. No matter what anyone tells you, a part of you will survive death. To know this without doubt is to act without fear of consequence within this life. It is now more than ever that mankind requires this sort of inner strength and tenacity. I'm sure that somewhere, somewhen, this will be an important document. It may not be now or here. That is completely accepted by me. And although this isn't completely accepted by you, I think it will be a lot closer than you expect or even think possible.